You know, life has a way of wearing you down sometimes. We've all had those moments where we feel like the weight of the world is just too much to carry. You're tired, not just the kind of tired that sleep can fix, but tired in your soul. I've been there too, when you've given all you have, when you've loved, worked, and fought with everything inside you and still feel like you're running on empty. But here's what I want to remind you of today: God knows that you are tired. He sees every tear you've cried, every silent prayer, every sleepless night. And He's not asking you to do it all alone. Sometimes we forget that. We think we have to be strong all the time, that we have to hold it together for everyone else. But God knows your heart. He knows your limits. And He knows when you'd rest real soul deep rest. It's okay to pause. It's okay to let go of the weight. Because when you rest in His presence, that's where you find strength. That's where you find the courage to keep going. So if you're feeling tired today, if life has been heavy, I want you to remember that God's grace is sufficient for you. You don't have to be everything to everyone. You just have to be still and trust that He's got you. He's holding you even when you feel like you're falling apart. So I encourage you to let go of the fear. Let go of the doubt. And most importantly, let go of the need to carry it all by yourself. Because God knows that you're tired, and He's ready to lift you up, to renew your spirit, to give you the peace that only He can provide. Rest in that. Trust in that. And know that you are never, ever alone. You know, there's something powerful about acknowledging the weight we're carrying. We live in a world where it's so easy to just keep moving, keep pushing, pretending like everything is fine. We tell ourselves, I'm okay, when deep down we know we're not. We've become experts at brushing off the heaviness, at wearing the mask that says we've got it all together. But let me tell you this, there is freedom in admitting that life is hard sometimes. We've all been there. We've all felt it, the pressure to be everything for everyone, the expectations from others, and even the ones we put on ourselves. That weight on your shoulders, that burden on your heart, it's real. And you don't have to pretend it's not there. There's a deep truth in giving yourself the space to say, this is heavy, this is more than I expected. I'm tired, because when you acknowledge the heaviness, that's the first step toward healing. It's the first step toward releasing it. We're not meant to carry everything by ourselves, but so many of us have learned to do just that, haven't we? Somewhere along the way, we believed that being strong meant never admitting we're tired, never showing we're struggling. We've equated vulnerability with weakness, when in fact, it's one of the most courageous things we can do. When you allow yourself to feel the weight, to say, I am not okay right now, you open the door for something greater. You give yourself permission to seek help, to ask for support, to lean on others, and most importantly, to lean on God. You can't let go of what you refuse to acknowledge. And sometimes the hardest thing to do is admit that you're not okay. But here's the thing, there's no shame in feeling overwhelmed. There's no shame in admitting that the load is too heavy to bear alone. That's part of being human. And in that acknowledgement, you allow yourself to find a way forward, to begin the process of lifting that weight little by little. It's time to stop running from the heaviness and start sitting with it for a moment. Feel it. Understand where it's coming from. And then when you've faced it, you can begin to release it. You'll find that you're stronger than you ever imagined, not because you carried it all, but because you had the courage to admit it was too much. There's a kind of comfort that comes from knowing you are seen, truly seen. And not just by the people around you, but by something greater than yourself, by God, because let me tell you, God sees you. In all of your mess, your struggle, your beauty, and your pain, He sees it all. And He loves you right where you are. You might feel invisible sometimes, like you're going through the motions and no one really notices. Maybe you've been working so hard to keep everything together, to be strong, to handle it all, and it feels like nobody gets it. Nobody sees the real you behind the mask, but God does. He sees what's hidden, what you've been carrying silently for so long. Every prayer you've whispered in the dark, every tear you've cried when no one was looking, He's been there, watching over you, holding you in His love. It's easy to feel overlooked in this world, to feel like your struggles are too small for anyone to notice. But to God, nothing about you is small. Your heart, your life, your dreams, they matter. And not just in the big, bold moments, but in the quiet, lonely ones too. God sees you when you're trying to be strong, when you're exhausted, when you're questioning if you can keep going. He sees the parts of you that even you might not fully understand. And still, He loves you exactly as you are in this moment. Sometimes we forget that. We think we have to earn His attention, that we need to be perfect, or at least better than we are, to deserve His love. But the truth is, God's love doesn't depend on our perfection. He sees us in our imperfections, in our brokenness, and He says, I'm here. I've always been here. And in that knowing, there's peace. There's peace in realizing that you don't have to hide anymore. You don't have to pretend to be okay if you're not. You don't have to be anything other than who you are right now because you are seen. Your story is known. And every single part of you, the good, the bad, the beautiful, the messy, God embraces it all. So in those moments when you feel unseen, when it feels like the world is moving too fast and you're just trying to keep up, remember this: God sees you. You are never lost in the crowd, never forgotten. You are seen, cherished, and deeply loved, just as you are. And that is a love that will never fail you. You know, sometimes we forget that it's okay to pause. We live in a world that tells us to keep going, keep pushing, keep achieving. There's always something more to do, something more to prove. And we start believing that if we slow down, if we take a moment to breathe, we're falling behind. But here's what I want you to hear today: you have permission to pause. You don't have to keep running on empty. You don't have to keep pretending like you're invincible. There's power in pausing. There's strength in stepping back and saying, I need a moment. But we don't give ourselves that permission often enough, do we? We feel guilty for resting, like we're somehow less worthy if we're not always doing something. It's as if we've tied our value to our productivity, as if our worth depends on how much we can juggle at once. But here's the truth: pausing doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you less capable. In fact, it makes you more in tune with yourself, more aligned with what truly matters. When you pause, you allow yourself to reconnect with your heart, with your spirit, and with God. You give yourself the space to listen to what's really going on inside you instead of just moving through life on autopilot. Sometimes we're so caught up in the rush that we don't even realize how tired we are, how drained we've become. But when you pause just for a moment, you start to see clearly again. You start to hear that inner voice, the one that's been whispering, slow down, breathe. You don't have to carry it all right now. And let me tell you, it's okay to put the world down for a moment. The world will keep spinning. The demands, the pressures, they'll still be there when you return. But when you pause, you return stronger, clearer, more centered. You can't pour from an empty cup, and pausing is how you refill. It's how you nourish your soul so you can keep going, not just for others, but for yourself. We need to stop believing that rest is something we have to earn. Rest is not a reward, it's a necessity. You deserve to pause simply because you are human, simply because your spirit needs it. And when you give yourself that permission, you're not just resting your body, you're resting your mind, your heart, your spirit. You're allowing yourself to be still long enough to hear what God is trying to tell you, to feel His peace settle over you. So take that moment. Give yourself the grace to step back, even if just for a little while. In the pause, you'll find the strength to keep going. In the pause, you'll remember who you are beyond all the roles you play. And most importantly, in the pause, you'll feel God's presence reminding you that you don't have to do it all the time. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to breathe. You are allowed to pause. There's a kind of strength that doesn't come from this world. It's not the kind you get from pushing through or trying harder. It's the kind of strength that comes from being still, from surrendering, from knowing that you don't have to do it all on your own. That strength that comes from God's presence. And when you tap into that, when you allow yourself to truly rest in Him, you realize that the battles you've been fighting aren't meant to be fought alone. We spend so much of our time trying to be strong, We think if we can just handle one more thing, if we can just power through a little bit longer, everything will be okay. But what happens when you reach your limit? What happens when you have no more to give? That's when you have to remember that your strength is not just in what you can do, but in who walks with you. And God is walking with you every single step of the way. His presence is where your real strength lies. When you're feeling overwhelmed, when you're carrying burdens that feel too heavy to bear, that's when you need to lean into him. Not just because he can lighten the load, but because his presence brings peace. His presence reminds you that you are not alone in this. And that right there is where your strength is renewed, not in your own power, but in knowing that he is with you, guiding you, holding you. There's something about resting in God's presence that brings clarity. The noise, the chaos, the pressures of life, suddenly they don't seem so overwhelming when you take a moment to just be with him. It's in that space when you quiet your mind and let go of the need to control everything that you begin to feel his peace wash over you. And that peace, that's where your strength comes from. It's not about pushing harder, it's about trusting deeper. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to have everything figured out. Because when you're in God's presence, you're reminded that he has the answers. He knows the path, even when you don't. And that should give you strength like nothing else. It's not about doing more. It's about believing that God is already working in ways you can't even see. So when you feel like you've reached the end of your rope, when you're standing in a place where you just don't know how to move forward, I want you to remember this: God's presence is your strength. You don't need to have it all together. You don't need to be the strongest person in the room. Because in God's presence, your weaknesses are met with his power. Your doubts are met with his assurance. And your fears are met with his love. That's the beauty of God's presence. It meets you exactly where you are and gives you what you need. It doesn't ask you to be more than you are, but it offers you a strength that is more than enough. So if you're feeling tired today, if life has been weighing you down, take a moment and enter into his presence. Sit with him. Pray, listen, and let him fill you with the strength that only he can provide. Because in his presence, you are not only seen, you are lifted, you are strengthened, you are reminded that no matter what comes your way, you are never alone. You have a source of strength that is unshakable, unfailing, and always available. That's what it means to find strength in God's presence. It's knowing that no matter how hard life gets, you have a refuge, a place of peace, a source of power that will carry you through. Letting go. It sounds simple, doesn't it? But we all know it's one of the hardest things to do. We hold on so tight to the expectations, to the roles we play, to the weight of everything and everyone we're carrying. We convince ourselves that we have to handle it all, that we have to keep going no matter how heavy it gets. But here's the truth: you don't. You don't have to carry every burden that's been placed on you. You don't have to keep holding on to the things that are breaking you down. You can let go. There's so much power in that. Letting go of the burden doesn't mean you're giving up. It means you're recognizing that you were never meant to carry it all by yourself. We carry these loads that were never ours to bear. We take on responsibilities that drain our spirit, and we wonder why we feel so tired, so overwhelmed. But the real strength comes not from holding on, but from trusting enough to let go. Trusting that there is a plan greater than yours. Trusting that God can do more with your surrender than you can do with your control. We like to think that if we hold everything close, if we just work harder or worry a little more, somehow we can fix it all. But have you ever stopped to ask yourself what it's costing you to carry all that weight? What is it taking from your peace? From your joy? From your health? From your spirit? Holding on too tightly to things that don't serve you, whether it's past hurt, future fears, or impossible standards, doesn't make you strong. It makes you tired. Letting go is not a sign of weakness, it's a declaration of faith. It's saying, I trust that I don't have to have all the answers. I trust that I don't have to solve every problem. I trust that God is bigger than this burden, and once you release that, you create space in your life for peace, for grace, for rest. You can breathe again. You can move through life with a sense of freedom because you're no longer tied to things that were never yours to carry. We often hold on to burdens because we think it's our responsibility to fix everything. But here's what I need you to understand. You are not responsible for everything. Some things are out of your hands, and that's okay. The weight of the world was never meant to be on your shoulders. You have to allow yourself to release it. You have to trust that God can carry what you can't. He's asking you to put it down, to stop gripping so tightly to the things that are keeping you from experiencing the fullness of life. Think about it. What would happen if you let go of that burden? What would change in your life if you gave yourself permission to release the things that are no longer serving you? The moment you let go is the moment you make room for something new. It's the moment you invite God's peace into the spaces that have been occupied by worry, by fear, by exhaustion. It's the moment you realize that you are not alone in this. Letting go of the burden doesn't mean you don't care. It doesn't mean you're ignoring the challenges in front of you. It means you're choosing to trust that there's a bigger picture, that there's a power greater than yourself at work. It means you're choosing to believe that you don't have to do it all because God already has a plan. He's asking you to lay it down, to give it over to Him, so you can walk through life with a lighter heart and a freer spirit. So today I encourage you, let go of the burden. It's time. You've been carrying it long enough. You've done all you can. Now it's time to release it into God's hands. Trust that He can handle it. Trust that He will provide. Trust that by letting go, you are making room for healing, for peace, and for the blessings He is waiting for you. You don't have to carry it all. You were never meant to. Let go and see what unfolds when you step into that freedom. Rest is necessary. I want you to really sit with that for a moment, because in today's world, we often treat rest like an afterthought, something we'll get to when everything else is done. But rest is not a luxury, it's essential. It's not something you earn after you've worn yourself down. It's something you need in order to keep going, to show up fully, and to live the life you're meant to live. We can't keep pouring out of an empty cup. And yet, so many of us are trying to do just that. We're running ourselves ragged, juggling a million responsibilities, trying to meet every expectation, and somewhere along the way, we've convinced ourselves that rest is a sign of weakness or laziness. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Rest is where you find renewal. It's where you recharge, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And let me tell you, there is no shame in needing that. In fact, there is wisdom in recognizing when you've reached the point where rest is the only thing that will truly restore you. Look around you, nature understands this. The earth rests. The seasons change, and there are moments of stillness, moments when everything slows down, when growth takes a back seat so that renewal can happen beneath the surface. And you too need that. You need those moments of stillness where you allow your mind, your heart, and your spirit to rest. Because it's in the rest that healing takes place. It's in the rest that you regain clarity, that you reconnect with yourself and with God. We've been taught to go, to be productive at all costs. But at what cost? When you deny yourself rest, you're denying your body, your soul, the very thing it needs to thrive. You might be getting things done, but are you living fully? Are you really present? Are you able to give your best when you're running on empty? Rest is not a pause in your life, it's part of the rhythm. It's how you gather the strength to continue. It's how you make sure that when you do show up, you show up whole. So many of us are afraid to stop because we think if we rest, we'll fall behind. But the truth is, rest is what allows you to move forward. It's what prepares you for the journey ahead. You can't sustain yourself on burnout and exhaustion. And here's the thing, rest is not just for your body, it's for your soul. It's for that deep part of you that needs time to reflect, to pray, to breathe. It's for the part of you that needs to hear from God, to feel His peace, to be reminded that you don't have to do it all. There's a reason why even the Bible tells us to rest. There's a reason why we are called to have a Sabbath, a time to step away from the busyness of life and simply be. It's not just about physical recovery, it's about spiritual renewal. It's about making space for God to speak to you, to guide you, to fill you up again. Because when you're constantly moving, constantly doing, it's easy to miss the whispers of His voice. It's easy to lose sight of what really matters. Rest is not just about taking a break, it's about creating balance in your life. It's about understanding that in order to be your best, you have to take care of yourself. And that means honoring your need for rest without guilt, without shame, and without feeling like you have to justify it. Your well-being matters, your peace matters, and rest is a part of that. So today I'm inviting you to embrace the necessity of rest, to stop pushing yourself to the point of exhaustion, to stop equating your worth with how much you can accomplish in a day. You are worthy whether you're achieving or whether you're resting. Rest is not the opposite of progress, it's part of it. It's what allows you to step back, to reflect, and to come back stronger, clearer, more focused on what truly matters. Rest is necessary, not just for your body, but for your soul. Allow yourself to take the time you need. Step away when you have to. Let go of the hustle long enough to breathe, to reflect, to connect with God, and to remember that life is not just about doing, it's about being. Being present, being whole, and being at peace with the rhythm that allows you to both move forward and rest when you need to. God's grace is enough. Take a moment to let that sink in. In a world that constantly tells you to do more, be more, achieve more, it can feel like you're never quite enough. You push yourself to meet expectations, striving for perfection, and sometimes in that relentless pursuit, you forget one fundamental truth: God's grace is enough for you. You are enough just as you are, flaws and all. Grace is not something we earn, it's a gift freely given, and that can be hard for us to grasp. Especially when we've spent our lives measuring our worth against our accomplishments, our failures, or the opinions of others. We think we have to achieve greatness to deserve love, to deserve acceptance. But here's the beautiful truth: God's grace doesn't depend on your performance. It's not a reward for being perfect. It's a reminder that no matter where you are or what you've done, you are fully loved, fully accepted, and fully seen. God's grace covers our shortcomings and failures. It wraps around our insecurities like a warm blanket on a cold night. It reminds us that we don't have to carry the weight of guilt or shame. When we stumble, when we fall, when we feel we've messed up, grace steps in and says, "You are not defined by your mistakes. You are defined by my love for you," and that is profound. That means that even in our darkest moments, when we feel lost or broken, God's grace shines the brightest. It pulls us up, encourages us, and whispers that we are still worthy of love, hope, and a fresh start. We often think we have to clean ourselves up before we can come to God, before we can accept His grace. But that's not how grace works. It's messy, it's raw, and it meets you right where you are. You don't have to wait until you're better, until you've fixed all your problems. You can come to Him as you are, with all your baggage, with all your pain, and know that His grace will cover it all. In fact, it's in our vulnerability and our honesty about our struggles that we find the fullness of His grace. You may feel unworthy at times, like you don't deserve the blessings in your life. But let me tell you, this grace isn't about worthiness. It's about love. It's about God's unending, unwavering love for you, no matter the circumstances. When you embrace this truth, it changes everything. It frees you from the chains of comparison and self-doubt. It lifts the burdens of perfectionism and fear of failure. God's grace is an invitation to simply be who you are, not who you think you should be. And here's the thing: when you experience God's grace deeply, it changes how you see yourself and how you see others. It allows you to extend that same grace to those around you. When you recognize that you're flawed and still loved, it becomes easier to love others in their imperfections. It fosters a sense of compassion and understanding, reminding you that everyone is on their own journey, trying to navigate the complexities of life just like you. God's grace is enough to heal, to restore, and to transform. It is the lifeline that pulls you through the storms, the gentle reminder that you are never alone in your struggles. When life feels overwhelming, when the weight of the world is pressing down on you, remember that God's grace is there, ready to catch you, to lift you, to carry you through. You don't have to rely solely on your strength. You can lean into His grace, knowing that it will always be sufficient for your needs. So whatever you're facing today, whatever doubts, fears, or burdens you're carrying, know this: God's grace is enough. It's enough to cover your past, your present, and your future. It's enough to give you hope when it feels like all hope is lost. It's enough to remind you that you are not defined by your failures, but by His love. Embrace it. Accept it. Let it fill you up and spill over into every area of your life. Because when you recognize the sufficiency of God's grace, you unlock the door to a life filled with peace, purpose, and unshakable joy. You are enough, and God's grace is more than enough to carry you through. You are not alone. This is a powerful affirmation that often gets lost in the noise of our daily lives. In a world that can feel overwhelmingly isolating, it's easy to slip into the belief that our struggles, our fears, and our burdens are ours alone to bear. But the truth is, every single one of us has faced moments of doubt, loneliness, and hardship. We are all human, and with that comes the inevitability of shared experiences, both the beautiful and the challenging. Life has a way of making us feel as if we're standing on the edge of a cliff, looking down into an abyss of uncertainty. In those moments, it can seem like everyone around us is thriving, filled with joy, and basking in the warmth of connection. But behind those smiles, behind those seemingly perfect lives, lie stories of struggle, heartache, and resilience. We often wear our masks so well that we forget to lift them long enough to recognize the shared struggles we face. Every person you meet has faced their own battles. You are not alone in your feelings of inadequacy, fear, or sorrow. These feelings are part of the human experience. The burdens you carry are not yours to shoulder in isolation. When you find the courage to reach out and share your story, you'll often discover that others are walking similar paths. Vulnerability is a bridge that connects us, allowing us to see that beneath the surface, we are all navigating the complexities of life together. But more than just the people around you, there is a deeper truth to embrace. You are never truly alone because you are enveloped in a divine presence that loves you unconditionally. In the quiet moments of despair, when the weight of the world feels too heavy, remember that there is a power greater than yourself that walks alongside you. You may not always feel it, but God is there listening to your whispers, holding your heart, and offering comfort in your darkest hours. His love is a steadfast reminder that you are never abandoned. When the nights are long and the silence is deafening, take solace in the fact that God is with you. He knows your pain, your doubts, and your fears, and He desires for you to lean into that relationship. You can pour out your heart, ask your questions, and seek solace in His presence. There's immense strength in surrendering your burdens to Him. He wants you to know that you can rest in His love, that you can find peace in the knowledge that you are seen and cherished. Moreover, the act of reaching out to others can also remind you that you are not alone. There is power in community, in sharing your struggles with trusted friends, family, or even a support group. When you open up, you create a safe space for others to share their own vulnerabilities. In those moments of connection, you find solace in knowing that you are part of something larger, a tapestry of experiences woven together by love, empathy, and understanding. Life can throw curveballs, and we can find ourselves feeling isolated during times of trial. But the truth is, community is not just about being surrounded by people, it's about forming meaningful connections that remind us of our shared humanity. Whether it's a comforting word from a friend, a simple smile from a stranger, or a heartfelt conversation over coffee, these moments of connection serve as reminders that we are all in this together. And while you may feel alone at times, it's important to cultivate relationships that uplift and inspire you. Seek out those who encourage you, who reflect the love and kindness you need during difficult times. Surround yourself with people who affirm your worth and remind you that you are never truly alone. Whether it's a friend who listens, a family member who understands, or even a mentor who offers guidance, embrace those relationships. They are the lifelines that will support you through the challenges you face. In moments of deep loneliness, remember to be gentle with yourself. It's okay to feel what you feel. It's okay to acknowledge the pain, the uncertainty, and the fear. Embrace those feelings, but don't allow them to define you. You are so much more than your struggles. You are resilient, capable, and worthy of love and connection. So take a deep breath and let this truth resonate within you. You are not alone. Embrace the beauty of human connection, lean into your faith, and trust that you are surrounded by love, both seen and unseen. Every step of the journey, you have the opportunity to connect with others, to share your heart, and to receive the support that will remind you of the strength that lies in togetherness. You are cherished, you are supported, and you are never truly alone.